Welcome to Red and Yellow, the podcast about all things to do with refereeing at grassroots level, looking at the laws of football, speaking to guests, and trying to help you become a better referee, with Adam Humphreys and me, Ed Connell.
Hello, it's Adam here, and I just wanted to get in on this episode of Red or Yellow to say a couple of things. Firstly, please send us your questions. You can send them on Instagram, you can send them via email, any which way you want. All the links are in the show notes, and we absolutely love answering listener questions because that is what's going to help you become a better referee, and that is what this podcast is all about. Added to that, please hit subscribe and follow the podcast in your little podcast app, and that way our meandering chats will magically appear on your phone whenever we have a new episode to release. And just one more thing, just a reminder that all views expressed in this podcast are indeed that of myself, Adam Humphreys, and not that of Football Queensland. And now the legal stuff's out of the way, let's crack on with the show. Hello, Edward.
Good evening, Adam. How are you?
Well, it's morning for me. The sun is coming up and it's getting my eyes a little bit, but yeah, it's lovely. I'm well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. I'm, as always, when we record on a Friday night, a little bit tired. It's been another busy long week, and it's like coming up for 9 o'clock in the UK. What time is it there?
Coming up for 6 a.m.
Yeah, so I'm not sure who's got the worst end of the deal here.
I woke up at 4:30. I think I can win that. At least you can drink wine. I can't.
Was that prep for the podcast?
Always, mate. I always do my homework. It actually was. I mean, I didn't wake up at 4:30 to prep for the. But I thought, hang on, I better give what we're going to visit in the news section a watch. Just to figure it out a little bit more.
That's generally a good idea if you have some idea of what we're going to talk about in the show. The listeners will be very pleased to hear that you're putting in the effort now.
I feel like
episode 20.
I feel like we should apologise to a few listeners. I've had a few people actually because I've been going to training a little bit more in here in Brisbane. Not that I can really run at the moment. My feet are still really bad, but yeah, and they're all asking me, when's the next episode coming out? When's the next episode coming out?
I know. I feel very bad.
Well, it's because you keep jet setting. You've been on holiday again, Edward. It must be about your 10th holiday this year.
Do you know what? It's terrible. I took my parents away because my mum's not been very well. I took my parents away for a few days to sort of try and cheer them up. And as soon as anything went on Instagram, I was then besieged with the usual messages, which is, do you ever work? Another holiday? Are you a tax exile? I mean, honestly,
you are. You're definitely a tax exile, aren't you?
I've really not been away very much this year. This year's been quite a quiet year in terms of travel.
I mean, in fairness, like, you know, you don't have children and stuff like that, do you? So, like, your ability to go on holiday is probably slightly greater than the fair majority of the world. But you've been on holiday more times this year than I have been in my entire adulthood.
I don't actually believe that, but I'm a bit too tired to ask you.
But having said that, I'm off to Fiji next week, so
yeah, well, exactly for your honeymoon. So that's all right. That'll be very nice. But no, I've had a few people over here. In fact, I got berated by one of our regulars who says that he used to listen to our podcast on his commute religiously. Yeah. And he was, rather upset that we hadn't been recording on a sort of weekly basis because he said, he looked forward to it. So we're sorry about that, but it is difficult. We've got busy lives and we're on opposite sides of the world. It's not ideal, but anyway,
we are still going.
We're here now. We are still going. Yeah, awesome. Over a year since we started.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're still here, and no plans to wrap this up anytime soon, especially since we haven't finished the bloody laws yet. So we'll keep going as long as we've got to get through that.
That being said, though, that's a good opportunity, I think, to and I know, like, obviously when we start recording and uploading more often, we get more interaction. That's just kind of the way these things work, right? But it would be good, like, definitely something that inspires us to hit the microphones is when we get really insightful questions or good, like, conversation from listeners and stuff. So that's great. So yeah. So agree. Keep that up when it comes in. We've got a good few questions this week.
And we've been having our usual sort of contact through all the various social media platforms with people sort of passing comments or posing questions. So we always look forward to getting those. So keep those coming as well. So we talk about news, Adam, first of all.
Well, it's normally what we start with, isn't it?
Time-honoured fashion. And there's only really one topic I want to talk about, and it's as
3 letters.
a bit of a bugbear of mine. Yeah, it's VAR once again has been dominating the headlines. And I suppose the obvious thing to talk about insofar as VAR is the Spurs Liverpool game, which has also generated a lot of media attention on the issue of VAR and probably more importantly on referees. Should I just give a brief summary of what happened in the unlikely event that any of our listeners haven't seen what happened? It was a really great game to watch, and it was really sort of both teams attacking. As a neutral, really enjoyable to watch the game. And I think it was, I can't remember what the score was.
I think this was to go 1-0 up, I think, for Liverpool.
Something tells me it was either to go 1-0 up or to go 2-1 up.
It was for them to take the lead, I think.
It was them to take the lead. I think it was 2-1 because there was a lot of sort of memes afterwards saying, how do you go from this? And it was a screenshot of them being 2-1 up on the scoreline and then to them losing 2-1 sort of a few minutes later.
Yeah, right.
So Liverpool scored a goal, and I think it was Diaz who scored it.
It was.
And to anybody watching it in real time, it looked like it was fine. It looked like it was a close to being offside. But my instinct when I watched it immediately was, I think he's just on. And obviously, everybody expects the next thing to happen is the VAR screens come on the screen. They draw the white lines to show the respective positions of the players, and you get your VAR decision. The assistant had flagged it for offside, and then next thing it said VAR check over, and we never saw the lines appearing on the screen. Everyone thought it was a bit funny, and I think Gary Neville, who was sort of one of the people commentating at the time, said that's all a bit odd. That doesn't seem right to me. That seems to have been done very, very quickly. And they were complaining they hadn't been shown the VAR footage which they normally would see. Anyway, it transpires that the VAR team had done the check. They had drawn the lines, and it was onside.
It's quite a way onside too. Like in real time, I mean, at that level, I can understand why the assistant isn't 100% certain. But like, you know, it's not like you're looking at the hair of a knee. Like it's a good foot length onside.
Yeah, although the assistant had flagged for it. So I mean, the
assistant flagged for offside, didn't he?
Yeah, it's in flagged for offside. Okay. Yeah, so he thought it was, but you know, I can understand that it was. It wasn't.
I mean, I've not done I've not done any Premier League football, but the little interactions I have had with players who play in the Premier League and running the line to them, it is so hard.
Like, oh my god!
Like I can't begin to imagine. Like I mean, I was running the line I was probably like 28. I was running the line to Matty Etherington, who at this point was in the West Ham first team, and he was probably like in his 30s, probably like 31 at this point, and his pace was like unbelievable. And it was just so hard, especially when you get the defenders and the attackers cross in. Like it's such a hard thing to pick up.
I mean, I've said before, I've been assistant on some semi-pro games. I've remarked before about it is frightening how quick these players are, and that's at the semi-professional level. And we're talking several tiers up the pyramid from that. You know, with Premier athletes who, you know, some of the fastest people when they run. And so, of course, it's easy to understand why in those marginal decisions, they will occasionally get them wrong. And we know statistically, assistants get it right the very vast majority of occasions, and occasionally there's errors. But the misunderstanding that took place was this. VAR thought the goal had been given. And so they simply said, check over, which would have meant, obviously, that the on-field decision would remain. And they thought it was a goal. But of course, the referee and the assistant who'd flagged for offside
given
us offside. And so they simply continued play. And then what's happened subsequent to all of this is they've released, unusually, the audio, which most people, if they're keen football fans and referees, they will have probably heard it because it was on social media and a lot of talk about it on Twitter. And I mean, it's quite cringeworthy because
Twitter. What's Twitter?
Formerly known as.
Don't roll your eyes.
And
the look of disdain on your face when I said that.
But it's just this painful audio where play has been restarted.
And they're trying to stop play. I know.
And they're trying to stop it, saying, can you stop it? Can you stop it? And the person that realizes there's been an error was the chap
referee
running the technology. No, right, it was the chap running the technology, not the assistant, not the VAR people.
It was the VAR assistant.
Who I think
on the subtitles he comes up as VAR assistant. I thought that was
right. Okay,
so I thought that was the VAR assistant referee. I don't know, but yeah.
No, I didn't think it's because they referred to him as the tech guy, or cool. I can't remember the company that runs. Is it Hawkeye? Something like that. Anyway, because they said it's like the Hawkeye person. Yeah, okay. It's basically saying no. You know, they got it wrong.
Goal should stand. Yeah,
goal should stand. And I mean, and then it's the sort of expletives as you expect when suddenly everybody realizes there's been an almighty balls up. Yes. Now. So the first thing I want to ask you, Adam.
This is the entire thing that VAR was meant to stop, right?
Oh, I mean, please don't.
Like the one thing VAR was meant to, or is meant to eradicate, is wrong offsides and disallowing of goals.
That has been remotely good at doing, in fact, is the offsides. But right, it's still flawed. But what I was going to say to you is there were a lot of people saying on Twitter, "Well, hold on, the referee gets in his ear, you know." A minute later, after the game's restarted, it's a goal to stop. And lots of people understandably saying on Twitter, well, why didn't that once they realised the error, why didn't they just stop play?
Because you can't
and give the goal.
He's restarted play.
Well,
which is the bit, if you're a referee, when you're watching the audio, that's the bit that you get really uncomfortable. You're like, oh, why have you restarted play?
I know.
Like, why? Like, and obviously the referee, it was Darren English, wasn't it? The referee, he's only going to restart play if he feels like he's 100% certain in what's going on, right? Like, none of us restart play unless we feel like we've got control of the decision and control of what's going on while the ball is stopped. And part of me wonders on this is whether play does get restarted pretty quickly considering VAR is involved, right? And I wonder if they were also trying to put a bit of pressure on to like speed the game up a little bit still during VAR stuff, and whether that's kind of just led to a little bit of, you know, like, and the thing is in refereeing, you only need a very small window of indecision or a very small window of a moment for an error like this to become cataclysmic. Like, you know, like it's probably, the thing is in terms of the game, he's probably had a really good game, other than this one moment and this one tiny decision where you've got four brains trying to tell one brain what to do.
Well, interesting. I'm not sure everybody would actually agree that he had a good game because, of course,
I haven't watched it.
He gave a red card. The VAR asked him to go to the screen to look at the replay of a challenge, which he'd initially given a yellow for. And he then saw the footage and gave the red. And just to explain that, what had happened is one of the Liverpool players had gone in and put their foot on the ball, but their foot had slipped off, right? So he obviously wasn't going in foot up to hurt anybody. He'd gone to put his foot on the ball, and it slides off and goes into the ankle or the shin. And what's interesting is when the referee's asked to go over and to look at the screen, they've got it on pause at the point beyond the slip, right? So the first image the referee gets is there's a foot.
They don't get the context
in someone's shin, right? And I think it's very difficult, having seen that initial image, which on anybody's view, if you show that to anybody, I would probably say 99% of people would say that's a red.
Yeah.
But then it goes back and it shows how it clearly wasn't a malicious challenge. He wasn't trying to hurt anybody.
I think I have watched this, and I do think it should be a red. Like, I think whenever someone's slipping over the ball, whether he slipped or not, when you're making that kind of contact on the shin of an opponent, it's it's an excessive force challenge, intent or not. Like, you can't judge intent, whether it's deliberate or not. Like, he's got a lot of force going into another player, slipped or otherwise.
I don't think there was a lot of force went into it. That's the problem.
Right.
But
Okay.
anyway, but I didn't say that because
No.
you were just sort of saying about whether the referee had a good game.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he's been subject to some criticism anyway. But I mean, it's every referee. I mean, I imagine every professional referee's nightmare, this sort of situation happening, because they've restarted, and it's just a shame that I'm just a bit puzzled as to why there wasn't a bit more chat. And just I mean, instinctively you want to say definitely offside or something that.
Watching it
But
back,
it just didn't
I
happen.
mean, watching it back, it just felt like it just felt like it seemed to me, I think they were under pressure to restart the game as quickly as possible. That's how it felt to me, just because of the lack of confirmation. Like, it felt like to me the on-field team didn't confirm with the VAR team.
No,
and
I agree.
that missing confirmation has caused the issue. Now, like, the thing I have with it is, I know you generally approach these things from a fan's point of view, and I generally don't, because I don't watch a lot of football. But the way it feels to me with VAR is, it was designed to take away mistakes in, like, clear and obvious mistakes in refereeing, right? But it does feel like to me all that's occurring because of it is it's highlighting and making a bigger deal out of mistakes. And I feel like it's just eroding elements of trust between referees and the wider public, whether that be at the professional game, but that whatever happens in that professional game always filters down onto us. And this erosion, because of the drama behind something like this, it's not making referees look in their best light. Now, I understand, like, we all make mistakes. I understand errors happen, and I have complete empathy for everyone who was on that game. Like, these things happen. What can you do? But you've now got Liverpool coming out going, we're seriously, like, we're taking legal action or whatever they threaten to do, because it's against the sporting, what do they say? It's against the spirit, not the spirit of the game. Like, it's something to do with, like, the sporting nature of competition or something. They think this error calls that into question, which is basically you're saying the referees are cheating us. And, like, it's a very, very, very corrosive and divisive thing. Like, the only way referees and football are ever going to move forward together in terms of losing the disrespect that goes on to referees, in terms of players and fans and managers and coaches understanding the game we have and the balance we have to apply, and the fact we do the job in a very difficult circumstance all the time. The only way that is going to happen is if everyone moves forward together in the same way. And these moments, and all VAR is doing, it essentially is, all it does as a tool is highlight referee errors. Yeah. Like, you look at the Women's World Cup, all it did, I think 100, I think 99%, I think one decision, the referee didn't reverse their decision on the field after a VAR review across the entire Women's World Cup. So therefore, you're saying you're openly exposing referees to mistakes. And even if, like, there used to be a really strong argument for referee that, look, whether that was offside or not, doesn't matter. The referee's made his decision. That's the final decision. We all move on and get on with it. And Gareth Southgate, in fact, I read Gareth Southgate's interview ahead of the internationals, and he said the same thing. He was like, look, we just got on with it. The referee made an error or didn't. We agreed or we didn't agree, but we learned to get on with it. Whereas now, all that's happening is it's casting doubt in players' minds on referees' decisions. It's casting doubt in the referees' minds on their own decisions, and it's causing division. And you only have to look at politics at the moment, and politics that are divisive isn't helping society in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, I no longer see the benefits of VAR. I mean, it was sold on the basis of we're going to get rid of all these glaring errors. Well, there aren't that many glaring errors that were taking place before. Occasionally there'd been somebody who would escape the yellow and it should have been a red. Occasionally a goal would have been scored or disallowed when it was or wasn't offside. But in the main, the statistics showed that professional referees were getting it right in the very vast majority of cases. And if they can't get, the offside bit right now, then I just think, what are we bothering with it for? And
the argument against that is they are getting most of the offside things right. Okay, like we are also, as a society, as the media, as whoever, as people who watch and commentate on football, we are focusing on the 1%. That is not indicative of the overall VAR system, right? Like that message of they got this offside wrong. If they're not getting that right, they're getting most of them right. When an offside goes to VAR review, it is correct.
They are from a sort of technical point of view. But I'm if I'm really honest, I'm not interested anymore in waiting 3 minutes to see graphics which show that there's a toe or a heel that's keeping somebody on or offside, right? I just think that is ridiculous. And also, the more I read about VAR and the problems with the cameras and the frame speed, I'm not even convinced anymore that there isn't even a bigger margin of error than we've been told already. And so I'm now firmly the view, I was before, but I'm more firmly the view that VAR is serving no meaningful purpose. What's interesting is that I think the Premier League rejected the proposal that they introduced the automatic offside in the Premier League this season. So, as you know, in the Champions League, it's an automatic VAR thing. That's why we get those lovely graphics where you show you the images of the people, and it comes up pretty much straight away, right? And that was at play. I don't know whether you saw the Champions League game the other night between PSG and Newcastle. It genuinely looked like an offside for one of Newcastle's goals, but that graphic comes up, and it obviously wasn't. And we elected not to introduce that this season. I don't know why, whether it was a question about whether everybody had the sufficient technology for it or not. But it seems to me that's the only point in having it. If you're going to have it, it's going to be quick. We're going to get the graphics so that everybody can understand. But if we're not going to get that, then I'm afraid I just don't think we should be having it. And I think if we are keeping VAR, and I know I've said this before, but I think we need to hear the audio. But we just need to hear the audio. What's going on? I don't like the situation whereby when they make an almighty balls up,
silence, don't you? Yeah.
They decide, we're going to exceptionally release the audio for this particular occasion. Just be transparent about it. I keep saying it. Professional rugby is such a joy to watch because as a spectator, you understand everything that's going on. It's just so transparent. What have they got to hide in having these discussions?
Yep.
But also the thing that's come out of it, which I'm most troubled about from a refereeing perspective, is obviously because Liverpool have made their complaints about it, and we all know they got it wrong. The Premier League refereeing body have said that English won't now referee any other games for Liverpool this season, right? I have a huge problem with that because
it wasn't really his fault.
Well, it's not. It wasn't. I mean, okay, it was on his watch. He was the referee in the middle. It is his fault ultimately because he's in charge of the game. But the point is, if we get to a stage where if clubs start complaining and there's been a clear and obvious error, are we then going to say, actually, yes, that referee won't referee for that team anymore this season?
I know,
because I think that does two things. I think it undermines confidence in referees because it gives the impression that.
Yep.
You're having to stop them refereeing a particular team because there's a bias involved.
It also
undermines us completely.
It also gives clubs the power to start trying to dictate who the referee is going to be.
Yeah, and I also
think it's a dangerous path to walk down.
As soon as you start allowing or making decisions about, that referee made an almighty mistake against that team, we won't have him referee for that team again this season. I mean, I'm being deadly serious in saying we haven't got millions of referees. You're going to come to a situation whereby you won't have an official to go in the middle because they'll be, barred from refereeing certain clubs. I'm really disappointed in their decision to do that because I think it basically it's almost an acceptance that there was motive in what he did.
In fairness, we don't know whether the referee might have said, "Can you keep me away from Liverpool for the rest of the season as well?" Because I've done that, not for an entire season. But if I've had a tough game and then I'm and just things didn't go well in that game, and then I'm due to see that club again, in 2 weeks, I might just say, look, can you just switch me around, and I'll see them again when it comes around naturally. Like, I just need a bit more space and time away from those people.
But the Premier League do that anyway, because if there's
You
been a
think so?
controversial game,
Yeah.
that if they've been shown to have ballsed up, that
Yeah.
we all get told, oh, that team of
But
referees are sitting out the next match.
and also that also being said is, I mean, you're thinking it from the point of view that Liverpool have dictated that, and I can see why, and that might well be the truth. But also, in the world we live in, like, sending, like, the abuse that Darren's probably got for it from fans, etc., and football community, or what, it's probably just for his own, like, safety as well, to a degree. And I have empathy with that. I can see the other side of it as well. And really and truly, the difficult thing there is they've publicized that decision. Just don't publicize it. Just keep it in-house.
I'm quite confident that is being done by the Premier League body of referees.
No, and that's fine.
In attempt to take the heat out of the situation, to appease Liverpool a bit, to say he won't referee again this season. But as I say, I think that is problematic on both fronts.
Well, that also takes him out of potential FA Cup fixtures, and big fixtures for him as a referee, right? And essentially, I don't think he's let himself down or anything. Like, I just think the system at large has let football down at large around the whole situation. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of how it feels.
But I mean, in the past, when referees have made mistakes, all right, they've been taken out of the next weekend's action, or there might be a bit of a break for their referee that team again. But the problem is, when you say that referee won't referee them again, you are accepting that it wasn't just an error, because if it was just an error, we all make mistakes and people just keep doing it. But when you acknowledge and say, no, he won't referee you again, you're almost acknowledging that there was something more to it than just doing a simple mistake. And I think that's very dangerous precedent to set from, is it PGMOL or whatever they're called? But
the Professional Games of Match Officials.
Limited.
Um,
so once again, VAR providing lots of talking point and nothing really positive to be said about it. I mean,
shall we move on to something positive? Because, I mean, it's been a while since we had an epic Ed rant, but I did enjoy that. It's got to be said. I sent you those. Like, do you remember UEFA asked elite Swedish referee Glenn Nyberg to share some advice for officials who are just starting out? Should we quickly run through those?
Yeah, let's run through those.
So, like, I saw this on a Facebook page, I think. And
it was on a Facebook page, because I think you and I both follow lots of sort of referee groups on Facebook.
Too many now.
Too many.
I didn't even know this world existed. I'm getting a bit tired of it. But it's nice, because we found a lot of listeners that way. So that's good. And they do send us nice messages, which is also good. So they just asked him 5 things, like, for advice for officials who are just starting out. And you know what? Even if you're not starting.
Who was the chap they asked again?
It was UEFA elite Swedish referee Glenn Nyberg.
Right, there we go.
I actually don't think this is just for people who are starting out, to be honest. I think these would be useful,
I can agree
no matter who you are.
So
number one, what do you think number one was, Ed? Without looking. Oh, he's looked.
Well,
just spoiling the game.
I'm not a bloody magician. Hold on. So they asked a Premier League referee for his 5 points of advice, and I'm meant to guess what was number one. Bloody hell! I mean, this is
not nice. Wait, to be fair, you do this to me every single week.
Yes, when it comes to
unfair,
hard fact.
No, it's not.
Not someone's individual perceptions as to what the most important things about being a referee. Crikey. Well, I can tell you, Adam, that his first point was love what you do.
Yeah. Do you love refereeing?
Do I love refereeing? I don't think I do love refereeing. That's probably a terrible thing to say when his first point is love what you do.
and this whole podcast is about encouraging referees.
And there we go. Thanks for joining in for this week's episode, and we'll see you next week.
It's been a fun year, but Ed's just killed the podcast, everybody.
No, because if I loved refereeing, right, I'd be pursuing my sort of career up the refereeing ladder. I think I'd be doing more of it.
But I think the reason you don't do that is because just how, like, how against it you are politically. Does that make sense?
No, what do you mean?
Well, you quite openly stated how much you dislike the FA.
Oh yeah, no, I have real issues with the FA, but I mean those are long standing, they're not just refereeing related. But
Right, okay.
No, I think I really enjoy refereeing. Okay, because obviously if I didn't really enjoy it, I wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah, okay.
But
I love it.
but I don't love it.
You
And
don't love it as much as you love me.
Obviously, that goes without saying. I mean,
Are you blushing? Are you blushing, Ed?
The fact you finally got married. I mean, I'm still only just come to terms with it now.
Is that why? Is that why we've not recorded much recently? Have you been
so I've not been
heartbroken?
returning your messages. I think it's just better to have a clean break for a while. Yeah, I think if you want to be, I think if you want to have a career as a referee, and I don't want to have a career as a referee, that's the distinction.
Yeah.
If you want to have a career as a referee, I think you do need to love it because you're not going to retire on the amount of money you make from refereeing. You get a lot of grief and abuse. It can be tough, and I think if you're going to do it, you do need to love it. I mean, you presumably do love refereeing.
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, look, I've gone through phases in my life where I didn't. Like, I retired for 3 years, didn't I?
Yeah, true.
And I was more than happy to completely give it up. It wasn't until I got into a space like I'm in here in Queensland where it actually started to bring back everything that I wanted kind of out of the game to me. Like I have that freedom and that joy. And one thing that's made a massive difference about being here in England being here in Australia compared to England is you can do more game. Like I can actually be a referee here. Whereas in England, the level I was at, you was really an assistant referee who refereed sometimes. I remember lining up to do games and I'd have the ball in my hands and I'd be like, what am I doing? Where's my flag? Like, this feels alien to me. Like and I was on the referee pathway. Like it was very frustrating when you're only refereeing once every 6 weeks. You can't hit a rhythm. You can't hit hit your stride. Whereas here, I just fell into a rhythm and fell into a groove and really found my voice as a referee. And that bred confidence. And when I was full of confidence, like that's when it really started to light up. So
I think that is important though, because you are right to a certain extent when you say that I have political difficulty. And actually, whilst you were just talking there, sort of mulling it over, and you are right about that, because I think actually I would have liked to progress up the refereeing ladder. I'm not saying I had any great aspirations, but I would have liked to have done. But my experience of dealing with officials from the FA, I'm afraid, has very much damaged my relationship with them.
Yeah.
And the idea that I would to pursue and advance my career as a referee, I would be entirely in the hands of people who I'm afraid to say I have big issues with them. And I'll say it again. I've said it many times before. There is a fundamental problem insofar as dealing with issues of diversity within the FA, and it is still, despite efforts being made over years, it's still an ongoing problem. And I do not like the fact that it is predominantly a hierarchy of old white males who are governing the game of football. I have issues with that. And so, I think that has impacted upon whether I wanted to pursue a career in refereeing, which is a shame, really.
Yeah, Glenn just says passion's the biggest thing as a referee. He said his father was an assistant referee, so it was in his blood. He was a role model, and he just got on with it. Like, it's good to have him at his matches because it gave him some experience on the sidelines to reflect on and stuff like that. So that's good.
Yeah,
Number two.
I was going to say, I think what's interesting is he says that if you love being a referee and you show everybody that you love it, then players will accept you more.
That is a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah,
that's something you are enthusiastically involved in doing because you really want to do it. Then I think they will appreciate you a bit.
That's something I've noticed because players are very passionate about playing football, right? And that might sound like the most obvious statement ever, but when they see your passion for refereeing matches their passion for playing, it does build a respect for the game, which is good. Number two, he says, master the laws of the game.
Well, I'm just disappointed that Glenn didn't give a link to our podcast at this point.
That being said, though, I did a laws test, like a random kind of strange laws test, just that I came across in our system, just for fun. This is how silly it is, right? That one I didn't do too well on, but before that, I did a laws test that one of my colleagues put together, and I got like 100% on handball. So it just goes to show that, you know, I have my issues with laws tests, but you should know the laws of the game, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it is an obvious point, and to be honest, I kind of think that mastering the laws of the game should be number one in
It's
his
because you're a
list
lawyer.
of important things. Well, yeah,
As
but I
opposed
mean,
to my approach, make it up as you go along.
our role as referees is to apply the law to football, and if you don't know the law, you're not going to be a very good referee.
I agree. I do agree.
But no, he's definitely right about that. Number 3, he says, get your positioning right. Well, we've talked about that a lot, and I hope we've given some fairly good, helpful, and practical advice to all levels of referees.
I would like to definitely do an episode on that, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Where we really go through kind of the intricacies of positioning and fitness and stuff.
Well, we keep saying that when we kind of finish our laws, we want to move on to having some guests, and some of the guests we've identified are referees who are refereeing at a good level. So that might be sort of topics we can pick up there. But I really think that he's right about that. Positioning is so important for all sorts of different reasons. So I agree with number 3. Yeah, number 4.
Believe in yourself and forget your mistakes.
I think that's really sensible.
It's true for life advice. That's just good life advice, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't change things that have happened, so you've got to sort of learn to deal with them, and you've got to be able to learn to not have those mistakes hold you back. And we've talked about this before, about sort of the techniques you can use within a game to buy yourself a bit of breathing space between a mistake and then your next sort of big decision. But yeah, it's really important because you do dwell on those sorts of things.
One of the key things about being a referee, and it's something that I have naturally in my, well, not naturally, but it's one thing I've always worked on in my life, is the concept of resilience. And that's basically, I mean, I can't remember what the exact definition of resilience is, but it is basically forgetting your mistakes and being able to move on. So it's the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties. And that's basically all you have to do. That's the most important thing as a referee, like it's not about not making mistakes. It's that famous, is it the Spider-Man? It's not, it's not what happened. It's not in never falling. It's how you get up from the fall. And that really is I think for me, that'd probably be number one. Just just being able to recover very quickly. I always talk about how quickly it took Howard Webb to recover from missing that red card in the World Cup final. When I think it was one of the French players drop kicked. Oh no, it was the Man City player, wasn't it, for Brazil? De Jong, was it Nigel De Jong? He either drop kicked or he got drop kicked in the chest or something. And I think he was Dutch. It might have been Dutch Brazil. Anyway, yeah. And Webb just missed it. In the first few minutes of the World Cup final. He just recovered so quickly, and they analysed it with his body language. And it's very important.
Mistakes do happen, and like you said, the example he gives is that sometimes you get things like a thrown wrong, you'll miss something, but if you don't let that sort of dominate your mind frame. After that, everybody makes mistakes. It's just that's just a fact of life, and so you just keep on going. And it's almost as though, it's quite encouraging, quite validating, Adam, is that I think the 5 points he's made, so we're going to come to number 5 in a moment, which is communication. But these points have all permeated, I think, through the entirety of our podcast from beginning to end.
Yeah, you're right.
All these topics have come up, and we've I think been saying the exact same things as he's saying. But he says it's number 5. Communication is really important in refereeing. It's part of your role in leading the match, and that might involve you having to explain decisions, etc. And we've talked about that so often, and I said that I learned from watching people like you and others that communication, explaining your decisions, why you've come to them, acknowledging sometimes when you might have made a mistake. I think that's all really, really important.
He also says right at the bottom of that, which I think is one of them, is a very important thing in terms of communication for life, not just for refereeing. Finally, there's also your assistant referees, if you have them. Now with VAR, sometimes the refereeing team can be 6, 7, 8 people. But he says we all need to talk to each other and listen. And the only thing that disappoints me with that is he doesn't even say like players as well. Like
Yeah.
If you listen to players, if you listen to people, it gives you much more power to stand your ground with your decisions, because if you're listening to them, they're going to listen to you. And so definitely listening is a very key aspect of refereeing as well.
Yeah.
Listening to the game, listening to the temperature, listening to the mood, listening to lots of different things can be really useful out there. I'd be really encouraged to like hear other people's like top 5 bits of what, how did they phrase it?
Really interesting.
Let's get the phrasing right. So some advice for officials who are just starting out. So what would your top, as a listener, send it in and we'll go through them next week. What would be your top 5?
Also, regardless of your level, because I think and even people with a very limited experience of refereeing can still say, the 5 most important points. And if people sort of provide them to us in a fairly succinct way, then we can, post some of them on our social media so everybody can have a look at them.
That'd be awesome. Right, should we get on to the law?
Oh, we're not doing any post bag, Adam.
Oh crap! I forgot all about questions.
Forgot about the listeners.
At this point, I'm going to get told off if I don't do a little shout out to my colleague Sean. Right, and Sean and I have this little game which I want to introduce to the podcast at some point, and I basically come up with a really crazy scenario in the context of football, and he has to tell me what the decision would be, and he's not a referee, so it's a good fun game. So I think that'd be a good game for us to play. So like I'd say to him something stupid like you've sent off 5 players from one team and the game goes to a penalty shootout. What do you do? And he has to figure it out, and it's quite good. And I'm because they're all in our chat, so I could probably.
Oh, good. We could dig them out at some point.
I'll dig them out at some point. So yeah. So I just thought I'd quickly throw that in there now as a little teaser for the future.
Can we pick up on the question we had in the last episode from Brody Simpson, who you'll remember was talking about, whether referees should take pride in giving out yellow cards.
Yeah.
And I kind of sort of very quickly dismissed that and said, of course you shouldn't. How ridiculous. Brody, bless him,
is now no longer listening to the podcast.
Oh, well, there goes another one. No, Brody messages after the podcast and said, I just want to clear up some thoughts. 100% agree with what you and Ed were saying, but can I rephrase the question? Should referees glorify handing out cards, e.g. showing photos of them doing so? Well, I think we kind of answered the first part of that. Should they glorify handing out cards? And I made my position very, very clear.
You did.
Now, sharing photographs of you handing out yellow cards is a slightly different topic.
I mean, can I just point out this podcast is called Red or Yellow? It's literally about the cards of the game.
I mean, I don't have a problem if a referee on social media, for example, has as one of their profile pics them brandishing a yellow or red card, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's the classic pose of a referee. It's the thing that most people think about when they think about referees. I don't think it'd be advisable to post a picture relating to a game that's only just occurred, because I think that's just likely to irritate and inflame people. If they see that you are sort of gloating about the fact you gave a yellow card to somebody. So I think that my answer is, if it's just a picture of you brandishing a card and it doesn't show the players or doesn't relate to a recent game, then I don't think it's any issue with that at all. I'd be very careful about posting pictures that maybe people have given you, they took of you handing out cards in a match, because I'm just not sure what I'm not sure what you'd achieve by doing that, other than probably just irritate the people that were involved in the game.
Yeah. No, I'm inclined to agree. I think it also depends on the caption. Like if you're showing it and then you're like, oh, I'm so glad I nailed this player, he was being a dick the whole game or something, like you're obviously going to be in trouble there, right? Like I'm just going through my social media right now and looking at some images of me refereeing, and there's some where I look like a real angry man out there. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah, that's part. I don't think there's a problem with that.
No,
with pictures of you refereeing.
I just think I think it depends. Like, firstly, the most important thing on this is if because a lot of like youngsters, a lot of school kids, they referee their friends and stuff like that, right? Now,
Yeah.
if you're going to share a photo of you brandishing a red card to someone who there's a potential that that photo might get back to that person very quickly, the second, like within a day or two of you posting it or whatever, I'd probably say that's not wise. So your comment about give some space and time between the two incidents is probably a good thing, between the game and the rest of it. So just let temperatures flare down, things calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it does depend on the caption. If you're going, oh look, here I am out refereeing, really enjoyed this game, it was a good game and stuff, like that's fine. Like as long as you're being objective about it and you're not subjecting opinion on people, I think it's fine.
Yeah. Cool. No, I agree with that. So thank you, Brody. And covered that. What other ones do you pick out for us to have a look at this week, Adam?
Oh, this is a very good question, and it's always so difficult a situation. So Dan McIver, hey Dan, hope you're well. Thanks for listening. Asked us, at a grassroots level, how quickly should I whistle for an offside offence? Should it be as soon as pass is played if the player is in an offside position, or wait and see if the player that was offside does touch the ball next? Confused, as obviously now modern day top level ARs leave the flag until really late.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I think this is a fairly easy one to answer. I think you do wait until the player has touched the ball before you do anything, because we've all had that nightmare scenario where you've gone to you've given the offside on the basis of course he's offside, but you hadn't been able to see somebody else was running in or something like that. So you have to apply the law, and it's until they play the ball that they.
I suppose the first
offside.
the first line of difficulty here is the fact that if he says at grassroots level, so from that, I'm going to assume he's based in England. I don't know, but he's probably not got assistant referees, right? Like,
no, I'm sure.
So that makes it equally more difficult. What I would say is there are some situations where you can just blow it, like that there are, like, but just like don't get into the habit of blowing it quickly. Like,
No.
make sure you get into the habit of looking around, and if there is literally just one attacker running towards the ball that's rolling towards the corner and he was in an offside position, then I think there's nothing wrong with you blowing that there. Because in those kinds of really obvious situations, it just frustrates everyone, especially like your local league players, because they ain't fit enough to do that, right? And that you want to eradicate that kind of dissent. You just want to get rid of any opportunity for dissent. But generally, like I would suggest as well, you have a proper, good, clear look around. Absolutely. And then also when people complain, you go, why didn't you blow that quicker? Like, obviously we all saw it. Go, I was just checking, I was looking around, like I was making sure that nothing else was going to happen. It gives you a way out there. It's always difficult, like, because technically someone's not in an offside position until they have until they become active. So it's not necessarily whether they've touched the ball. The touching of the ball is like your exact safety net, right? That's why it's in there, because that's your safety net. Once they've touched the ball, they're clearly active. But if you feel like you can justify they've become active, whether a player is going to run in behind, if you can justify the player who's offside was active and has affected the defender in some way, shape, or form, then you can whistle for it a bit earlier. I would suggest caution is probably better though than trying to be a slick looking, sharp witted, very fast minded referee, because you're going to slip up more often than not until you just keep waiting for objective fact to guide you.
Yeah, I think that's all spot on. I mean, that's spot on. I mean, I think you're right in saying that, there are some glaring obvious situations whereby it would be ridiculous to wait until they became active, because they're the only player that's going to get to the ball, and it's a clear offside position. It's interesting. You sort of said, most grassroots referees wouldn't have assistants. I'm not sure assistants at grassroots actually make the job of the referee when it comes to offsides any better, because
not if they're like club assistants. Like, when I say an assistant referee, I mean a neutral.
Oh, you mean
an actual referee, a qualified referee. I'm not talking about club. Like,
club
I'm not
assistants.
talking. Yeah, I'm not talking
disaster.
about. They are. They're an absolute
because
disaster.
They don't understand the laws, and they will, of course. This is why it's hugely problematic. They will put the flag up for offside, right? before the players become active.
I know.
Because they misunderstand, and so everybody suddenly stops.
Yep.
And so it actually makes your job even worse. But
haven't we discussed this before? Like when I was doing that in the UK, I would make it very clear to the captains, and I would make sure the captains made it very
I do
clear
that in every game,
that
Adam,
my
and
whistle
still
determines
happens.
offside. Yeah, of course it does, because
It
players
still happens.
Players are players.
And sometimes I'm even having to shout out that the player's onside, so everybody can hear me overruling the assistant. Because the problem is at grassroots, everybody just suddenly stops as soon as some random substitute puts their high vis bib up to flag for somebody being offside. Everybody suddenly stops, and then suddenly somebody else runs through, and it's just
that's the good thing. Like that, I mean, that I say that's a good thing. Like proactive refereeing, right? Play. Like you just keep shouting when that happens.
Yeah.
Go onside. Like I do it even when I've got comms professional assistants,
and
I'm doing, like the third tier of football in Queensland. Like I'm screaming, play. Do not, like, even if the players think it's offside and it's not, I am telling them it is not offside as loud as I can. Because that definitely just helps manage situations like that. And then you hope one defender listens to you. Yeah.
And that's all you can, that's all you really can do. So, I mean, I'm very vocal, especially if I'm overruling somebody who's plainly, not in line with the last player, the last defender, and they sort of flagged and they got it completely wrong, and I'm shouting out, onside, play on, yeah. I mean, I always chat to assistants about trying to explain to them that they've got to keep in line. But
that's just reminded me, like you can say to an assistant you need to keep in line and they're not going to listen to you. But I used to always frame the conversation thus. I used to say, guys, if there's an offside decision and you are not in line, like not even close to in line, if you are like 5-10 yards up the line and you raise your flag, I am not giving that offside. Now, it's your team that you're in charge of, okay? So if you want your team to do well today, it is your responsibility to make sure that when I look, because you think it's offside, that you are in a position that I can deem credible. And if you're not, I will just overrule the decision and I will tell your club to get on with it. And that is your responsibility. And when you say it like that to them, they go, oh shit, yeah. Like, that makes so much more sense. Rather than going, I need you to be in line, they don't know what that means. They don't know what in line is, and they're going to get distracted on Instagram or whatever, or, checking in with their mate who's a substitute or whatever. Like, but you say, like, I will just let play continue. If you can't give me a proper decision, I'll just let play continue. And if a goal gets scored, that's not my problem. That's your problem.
Yeah.
And I'll let you deal with your own team.
And I do, and like you, I say to the referees at the outset, it's playing the whistle, make sure he understands that. I've also explained to them that, the assistants have been asked if they can to do it, but the decision's ultimately mine. Obviously, there's more prospect of me giving the offside decision if they're keeping up with play. But I make the point, if they're not doing that, then I will override them. I just don't know. I just don't really know how much that ever gets relayed to players. Do they? How much they go away from that discussion with you, and go round and say to people.
Essentially, that doesn't matter, because when something like that happens, it's proactive refereeing. You can look at the captain and go, mate, I told you. If you didn't tell your team, that's not my problem. I told you what the go is today. I told you the situation. Don't come looking at me. I've told the assistant. I've told you as the captain. You sort it out between yourselves, because he is your club representative. That is the only way you can deal with it, right? Like, the captain will get annoyed if you haven't had that conversation with him. But it's like if someone says, if I say to someone, if you do that again, I'm going to punch you in the face, and they do it again, and I punch them in the face, they cannot be surprised that I've punched them in the face, because I told them the consequences of what was going to happen. Okay, I'm not recommending going around punching people in the face, by the way.
No.
But when you just put it out there and just like, this is what's going to happen. If this happens, that's what will happen. No one can argue with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's very, very true. Something else to that question. Was there one more we picked out, or you picked out?
There is one more if we've got time. Banter. Do you like? I hate the word banter. A quick question for you both. What is your view on a referee's response to banter between opponents? Assuming it's not racial or discriminatory in nature, do you ever speak to a player who's clearly trying to wind up an opponent? Cheers, Michael. P.S. Really enjoying the podcast. Thanks, Michael. That's Michael Clark. Michael. Really appreciate it, mate. Banter.
I
hate the word.
I mean, I've said before that a lot of the games I referee are between people that know me and people that know each other, and I certainly tolerate a level of banter in those sorts of games to a different level that I would perhaps tolerate in a game where I didn't know the parties involved. Mm-hmm. It's much easier for me to know when there's a relationship between all the various people. I don't have issue with the banter. It's difficult. I think that you've got to make sure that you're keeping control of the game. And I think if you think there's a danger that the banter is ramping things up a bit and is going to provoke someone to perhaps do something which is going to get him into trouble, I think then you need to sort of get involved and to explain that they need to stop it. And I think that's what I'd probably do. I think it was just a sort of bit of, I don't have a problem with if people sort of take the mick out of each other when there's a missed shot, for example, or someone goes to shoot and it goes off for a throw in or something.
I do that. I don't know. I do that myself.
Exactly. I think
this ain't rugby, mate.
It would be. You wouldn't be human if in moments of, as lawyers would say, in moments of levity, if you didn't sort of say something's funny and call out what it was, it'd be a bit odd.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's all fine. But I just think you've got to be careful about it because it can very easily go from banter into winding people up that then turns into aggressive challenges, retaliate. I mean, so I think if you get a sense that is happening, I think you'd be sensible and duty bound to kind of get involved and have a chat to people.
I think my general instinct is if I hear it and I see it more than once between the same two players, I will probably get in and just be like, guys, come on, let's just leave it alone now. And they're like, we're just having a laugh. And I'm like, I know, and that's fine, but that laugh can soon boil over. So let's just be a bit careful. Yeah, let's just cut it out. And generally they accept that kind of premise. I mean, like, for me, banter is just an excuse for bullying. But I don't think that's what this context is. And essentially, if someone's more focused on winding up another player, then that team's going to lose anyway because they're not focused on playing football, so they're only causing their own problem. You just have to be aware of it. Like if you see two players constantly around each other doing this, that, and the other, and sometimes it looks, or like the key there is like once one of them walks away, look at the reaction of the guy who was just on the receiving end of it, and if he takes it in good humor, then you're probably going to be safe. If he doesn't, if he looks a bit snarly about it, then get involved. But yeah, it's not easy, and every situation is different. You just have to use your life experience to judge it.
The author of this message is acknowledges this point, but I'm going to reinforce anyway, in that you can never have banter about things such as the color of someone's skin,
no, of course,
about their sexuality. I know it goes without saying, but you'd be surprised how many people, when I used to do my sort of campaigning work about discrimination in football, would constantly say to me, it was only banter, and we had to keep reinforcing that you can't have banter about those sorts of topics.
No, so absolutely right.
If it is those sort of things, then you absolutely need to get involved.
There's also a fine line. There's also a fine line between banter and mocking, and a lot of what I see on the football pitch is a player mocking another player as opposed to actually having a friendly joke with him.
Yeah.
And that's very easy to see that difference on. And if someone is mocking someone, you need to stop that immediately because that's going to inflate, like that's going to flare up tempers, and you just can't have that on the football field.
Yeah.
So you do have to be very aware of mocking and of
not sporting behaviour either. So you're duty bound to get involved at that point.
Yeah, I suppose. But I think you are. But I think also you could misread that yourself as a referee, as a person, as a human. You could misread a mock for a bit of banter. Like, I can see where you might just not quite get the judgment right in that situation. So you do need to be quite sensitive to that.
Yep, good point. There we go. Thank you for
Very
that
good
question. Yeah, I think we'll. That's probably enough for the postbag for this evening, because we haven't done any law yet.
No, and we need to get through the penalty kick.
Over an hour into our podcast, so
well, I quite like the fact we're doing less uploads but bumper editions. I quite like that.
I also like the fact that we seem to do less about the law, more talking about people's problems and issues, and
helping people
and current topics, which I think is more interesting. Because
have you got anything you need to get off your chest, Ed? Is that why you're bringing that up?
But it's just ultimately, if people need to know what the law is, they can go to the laws of football. They don't need to come to our podcast for it.
Of course.
I mean, we occasionally provide a bit of explanation and hopefully some insight, but yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that the rest of the stuff we talk about is as important, if not more important, than the actual laws themselves.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, so let's go to law
14.
number 14. Crikey, 14. Well, in case anybody didn't know, it begins by telling us a penalty kick is awarded if a player commits a direct free kick offence inside their penalty area or off the field as part of play, as outlined in laws 12 and 13. And a goal may be scored directly from a penalty kick.
So essentially, a penalty kick is a free kick in the penalty area.
Yeah. Direct free kick in the penalty area.
Procedure.
Ball must be stationary on the penalty mark. The player taking the kick must be clearly identified.
Wait, it does say the goalposts, crossbar, and goal net must not be moving.
Yeah, I mean, I skipped over.
What if it's a windy day?
I mean, what is that there?
That's wonderful, isn't it? That's just so wonderful.
I mean,
but again, you could put that in a laws test, right? The net is moving.
The net ripples
due to the wind. Is a penalty kick allowed to be taken? And in law, it's not allowed to be taken. Anyway, let's move on. The player taking the penalty kick must be clearly identified. That's crucial. That's something I'm very assiduous about when it comes to, did you like my new word? When it comes to a penalty being taken.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is usually fairly obvious, but yeah,
that doesn't matter. You know why I do it? Like, because you've got everyone there, and it's a big set piece, so you have to control it well. So I'll always go, "Are you going to take the penalty kick?" And the guy goes, "Yeah," and then I'll tell the goalkeeper, and then that's my reason to make sure the goalkeeper is in the right space. And then I can say to the keeper, "Wait, get on your line, sort it out, stop being an idiot, get back. This guy's taking it," in the discussion, and then I can go around the rest of the penalty area and telling them what I expect to occur. Yeah. So it is important.
The next part includes one of the law changes this year. So obviously, the defending keeper has to remain on the goal line between the goalposts until the ball is kicked and facing the kicker. But they've introduced this year, for those people who are up to date with the law changes, that the goalkeeper must not behave in a way that unfairly distracts the kicker. So there's no delay in taking the kick off or touching the goalpost, crossbar, goal net. So this is, we've seen it happen time and time again. Goalkeepers walking up to the penalty spot, trying to make sure it's on the penalty spot. Then they go back to their line. They're sort of all over the place. And this is the aim of this is just to sort of to cut out all that distraction, unsporting behaviour.
It's also like the jumping on the line where they kind of shake the crossbar and stuff.
Yeah.
It's nervous energy from a goalkeeper. You just have to tell them to not do it.
And then also explains how where the penalty spot is. Well, we know that. And then all the other players have to be outside of the penalty area. And the player taking the penalty kick must kick the ball forward. Backheeling is permitted, provided the ball moves forward. So that's an important thing to remember, because we've all seen those penalty kicks before where someone touches it and
not sideways though. Not sideways. Has to go forward.
Which is a really, really important thing to remember. Goalkeeper has to have at least one part of 1 foot touching or in line with or behind the goal line. and the ball is in play as you expect when it is clearly moved and being kicked.
On that, I always tell the team, the players who are rushing in, I always go, no one moves until the ball is kicked, and then I say it again and moves forward. So I tell all the players who are waiting to come in, I'm like, no one moves until it's kicked and moves forward. Okay, that's it, and then everyone knows the expectation.
Yeah. And then again, a really important thing, which I think is often forgotten by people, the kicker must not play the ball again until it's touched another player. So, am I right in saying, Adam,
ball hits the crossbar?
Ball hits the crossbar,
comes back to the attacker, the guy who took the penalty, the guy who has to be clearly identified, and this is why.
Is not a goal if they then
put it in the net, correct?
Right.
But if the goalkeeper saves it,
then it has touched another player, and then the kicker can kick the ball again.
Correct.
And I reinforce that because I've seen that happen a few times.
Yep, it does
happen. And people just don't appreciate that's one of the laws.
Nope.
So that's really worth remembering.
And it makes sense, right? Because if you just break it down, you can't have a player who takes a free kick, touch the ball twice before it's touched another player. It's exactly the same rule. The only issue in this is the ball bounces off of crossbars and posts in this situation, which doesn't happen at a free kick. So that's why that's in there.
The next bit, Adam, is was touched upon by us. Do you remember there was an incident where VAR gave a penalty after the referee had blowed up for time, and we were debating as to how long should the referee allow play to continue? Because you remember I said, well, if time was finished and VAR then says it should be a penalty, as soon as that penalty kick was taken, he should have blown up. Anyway, it says here, additional time is allowed for a penalty kick to be taken and completed at the end of each half of the match or extra time. When additional time is allowed, the penalty kick is completed when, after the kick has been taken, the ball stops moving, goes out of play, is played by any player, including the kicker, other than the defending goalkeeper, or the referee stops play for an offence by the kicker or the kicker's team. And if a defending team player, including the goalkeeper, commits offence and the penalty is missed, saved.
But isn't that basically saying kind of anything?
So literally, as soon as anything happens, or even if the ball stops moving,
if a goal isn't scored from a penalty,
it's over. And what was interesting, the referee didn't do that on that occasion because he let. Do you remember it kind of?
Yeah, I do.
Had an opportunity to go out and come back in again, and I was sort of saying, what a disaster if that had gone in on that second phase of play after the penalty had been missed. And so
it's just not safe refereeing. Yeah.
No, the referee should have blown up before then. So that's the first part. The next bit is entitled Offences and Sanctions. And this is one of those situations where they give a whole host of different examples of what you do and what happens in certain situations. So
can I just say also in part 3 of this, there's a summary table that sums this up really well. So if you're listening to it and going, what was that? Just go to Law 14, Section 3, and the summary table kind of just surmises all of this together.
I kind of don't really see why they put Section 2 in.
Because the summary table is really effective, isn't it?
So straightforward and concise that you can see immediately, what the situation is. And it's sort of, I kind of don't really follow as to why, when they've got that really concise, clear table, that they have to set out in word form all the different scenarios. So I don't think we need to go through all of these, but let's give an example. So if before the ball is in play, one of the following occurs, let's just take an example of it says about if the goalkeeper offends, right? If the ball enters the goal, a goal is awarded. Well, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
If the ball misses the goal or rebounds on the crossbar goalpost, the kick is only retaken if the goalkeeper's offence clearly impacted on the kicker. So I mean, that's niche. I mean, that is not obvious, is it? Because you would think infringement, retake, but it's not quite that clear.
When a penalty, like with penalties, it's just an opportunity to be sensible, right? Like you don't want to end up in these niche situations in law. So essentially, I tell my assistants, and I always forget to tell them during during the pre-match. So I'm telling them if a penalty occurs in the game, I'm like saying on my comms, like if he misses this, there is no way, shape, or form that we are having a retake. Okay, if he misses it, because essentially, if a player can't hit the target from 12 yards, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah, I know you've said this before.
Yeah. So like, and if the goalkeeper is doing something that is so obviously going to impact the person taking the penalty, you're going to interfere and deal with that anyway. You're going to get involved because it's going to be so bloody egregious as it is. So I think you can.
You're full of big words this evening,
mate,
Adam.
I'm on form, aren't I, this morning? It's great.
Oh, blimey.
So essentially, look, you can just control these situations so much better than the law kind of suggests you need to, right? This is kind of written law for a referee who just isn't being very practically minded out there sometimes, you know.
I think your approach is spot on, really. But just to complete this part as an example, if the ball is prevented from entering the goal by the goalkeeper's actions, then you do have the kick retake. And I suppose that is common sense from what you've just been saying. And then where the goalkeeper's offence results in kick being retaken, the goalkeeper is warned for the first offence, cautioned for any subsequent offence. So they get this sort of one warning before.
That would be coming off the line.
Yeah, coming off the line.
Yeah.
Or, you know, holding on to the crossbar or something as you're... Anyway, but...
Yes. Dangling.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to benefit from us
going through the rest of it.
Going through the rest, because I think it's all quite straightforward.
It does say here, though, if after the penalty kick has been taken, the kicker touches the ball again before it has touched another player, an indirect free kick is awarded. So you stop play, indirect free kick, because it's a double touch offence. Does that make sense?
There is no, there is no difficulty with the nominated penalty taker touching the ball forward and another player coming in and kicking the ball into the net. And we've seen that examples that happen.
Provided they didn't move before the ball was kicked and clearly moves forward.
They weren't within the area, but when the ball's kicked and the ball goes forward.
Do you remember from the World Cup in Qatar, like all the images of Argentina like running, like how they froze it and everyone was running on before the ball had clearly been kicked and moved forward and stuff like that. Generally, I'd say, look, a penalty, you just don't want like stupid situations like that. If it gets nudged forward and a second player is running in to kick the ball into the goal, I would argue you have a much stronger case for encroachment than you do allowing that goal to stand. So if it was me, I'd probably go, there's like, you encroached, you moved before the ball went in, like before the ball was kicked. And like, because it's one of those situations in football, isn't it, where you look at it, you go, it just doesn't feel right, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the team who scored the goal will accept encroachment a lot more than the team who conceded the goal will accept it wasn't encroachment. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's probably better. You don't want to get into those kinds of arguments with players.
I agree with that. So, summary table I think is really helpful.
Just looking at the table, it says illegal fainting. We didn't cover that, did we? But that's quite important as well. Where's that on it? You're not allowed to completely stop your momentum, are you?
Yeah, it says a player of both team
fainting to kick the ball once the kicker has completed the run up. Fainting in the run up is permitted. So it's permitted, but you have to keep moving. I believe you do. I just can't see it written in there. Can you?
I can't see it written in there, but my understanding is you can faint and sort of move direction, but it has to be a continuing movement. That's my understanding. I can't see where that is, as you'd expect it to be in this penalty section. You just can't stop your run up.
Again,
it has to be a run up.
Comes down to unsporting behaviour, right? You can faint, but you can't be unsporting. So just judge that for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and the weird thing is they talk about fainting within the offence and sanction section,
but they don't put that bit in there.
But they don't actually talk about what's lawful and what's unlawful about what fainting is.
and then define fainting. Like that's the thing, isn't it? That's what we need to look at.
I don't. You would expect you to find that bit in here, but there has to be continuing. Fainting is permitted, provided it's still a continuing motion by the player taking the penalty kick. You'd expect to have seen that in the section, but inevitably this will be in some other section that they define fainting in the glossary or something.
So I'm looking at that now, football terms. Fainting, an action which attempts to confuse an opponent. The laws define permitted and illegal fainting, but I don't know where illegal fainting exists.
The player feints to kick the ball once the kicker has completed the run-up. Then that is a cause for offence. But you can feint in the run-up. So it's not quite as clear as we've said it to be. I mean, I've described it as being sort of in your, you have to keep doing the run-up. You can't stop. And that
has completed his run-up, because you're no longer running, are you? You're stopping.
Yeah.
God, that's why you went to law school and I didn't.
Anyway, if we're struggling to interpret it, I imagine there's a fair few other referees that are sitting there listening to this podcast going, I hope to God that I don't have to deal with a fainting situation because I don't know what on earth illegal. I think
generally now in this day and age,
it feels wrong.
And generally now in this day and age, it's one of those things that I think was around a lot when I was growing up, but it's not around much anymore in football. You don't see it much from the pros. So you don't see it much on the pitches that you're dealing with.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably true.
I suppose we're left with one thing now, aren't we?
We are indeed.
Cue jingle. It's now time for Eds Fun Facts. I've got a question for you actually before we start Eds Fun Facts. What's the difference between unlawful and illegal?
I don't think there is a difference. Oh,
no, there is.
Unlawful and illegal.
Yeah, what's the difference? This is great podcast material, isn't it? Just stunned silence.
Fascinating podcast material.
Do you want me to give you the answer?
Yeah, give me the answer.
Unlawful is the act of breaking the law. Illegal is a sick bird.
This is what I have to contend with. I imagine the listeners are very sympathetic to my plight of having to deal with you. There we go.
Excellent.
Anyway, I haven't got huge amounts of fun facts because there's not a huge amount of fun facts around the topic of penalties, but there is some interesting information that I thought we'd go through. And one of the most interesting things that about penalties is the success rate or otherwise, depending on the power of the shot. So this is the whole argument of power versus placement, which I find quite interesting. I enjoy stats like this. So this is a research that was done into analysis of 129 penalties that were taken during various World Cup finals and finals of the UEFA Champions League. Okay, so it's not across every game of football, but it's a fairly good,
pretty good level.
Yeah. Now, they analysed the success rate of penalties where the power of the shot is 50% power, 75% power, and 100% power.
How do they define that?
Well,
percentage?
I mean, I think it's pretty basic on things like speed and things like that. So somebody's top speed.
That's different for every player.
No, because professional players are all going to have
stats
fairly
on
narrow parameters about how hard the ball can, speed of the ball. I think it's probably be consistent against across most strikers.
On this topic, didn't one of the England players from the Women's World Cup, her penalty, wasn't it the most powerful penalty all season? Or the most powerful shot all season?
You did remark about that on one of our podcasts. Yeah. You watched it and been...
Who was it? I think it might have been Rachel Daly. Can't remember.
Anyway, so let's begin with a simple question, Adam. I know you had you like these multiple guest questions. When you were looking at the three types of shot I've described, 50% power, 75% power, and 100% power.
Which one goes in?
Which is the most successful in terms of goals scored?
75%.
What's your rationale behind that?
Because if you're going for 100% power, you're likely to not hit the target.
You are spot on.
Yes!
Now, I know you like to have a good guess at figures. So we've ascertained that 75%
No. Can I just be clear? You have imposed that upon me.
So we've already established that 75% power reaps the best results in terms of success. What percentage of penalties taken at 75% power do you think resulted in a goal?
What percentage?
88. Oh, not bad. You're in the right ballpark. 81% of penalties struck at 75% power were scored.
Right.
Interesting. Let's just do by contrast. Percentage of penalties scored where they're hit at 50% power.
46.
Oh, Adam, that's very good. 47.
Oh, wow.
12% out.
Wow.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. And then conversely, percentage of penalties scored when it's hit at 100% power.
Is it somewhere between those two, 46 and 81?
Yeah, there's logic.
Let's go 74%.
No, not that high, because obviously 75% power was only 81%. 100% power, only 63% of those were scored. But what's also interesting is they give you the stats for what percentage missed the targets for these different power levels, and what percentage of these shots were saved. Okay, so missing the target is the next one we're going to ask you about.
Okay.
Of the ones they analysed, where the shot power was 75%, so that's our premium conversion rate.
Yeah.
What percentage of those 129 penalties missed the target?
12%.
No, it's lower than that. In fact, I think this encapsulates the whole argument about power over placement, right?
Yeah.
So only 1% of kicks hit 75% missed the target.
If you go at 75% of your power. Wow.
Yeah. I don't think the next one's going to be too difficult for you. What percentage of kicks hit at 50% power missed the target?
0.
Correct. And then what percentage of shots hit at 100% power missed the target?
Would that be somewhere around half of them, 50?
No, not quite that high. 31% though, still high.
That's a significant difference, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
31 to like 2 or 3%.
It really does crystallize that difference between striking the balance between power and placement. And then I don't think these next results are particularly surprising, but we're now talking about the percentage of these penalties that were saved, right? So let's start again with our premium. 75% power. What percentage? And bear in mind that 81% of those
went in.
And you've already told, and this is testing your maths, Adam.
Yeah.
You've already told me how many missed the target. So that leaves us
I don't know,
with
like about 16%.
18%.
18%.
18%.
That's close.
Yeah, it's just maths now.
Yeah, I'm no good at maths, mate. I'm really bad at maths.
50% of when people use 50% power, over half of them are saved, 53%.
Yeah.
And then when it's 100%, as you might expect, only 7% of them are saved, but there's a high percentage of people missing the target. So
you know what I think of most in this discussion?
What's that?
Golf. You ever played golf?
Yes, I've played golf. Yeah.
And it's the same, isn't it? In golf, like if you try and hit a ball 100%, like you are definitely not being accurate. But if and you get so much more bang for your buck when you just don't just swing willy-nilly and you just take a little bit of pace off you just get much better results.
Yeah, it's a spot on analogy because, of course, and the second you try and slow it down so much that you kind of overthink what you're doing with your swing,
it goes wrong again.
It goes wrong again. So it's just that kind of balance between bit of rhythm, not trying too hard, not trying too little.
That's very interesting.
Yes, I thought you might enjoy that. I enjoyed that one.
That's good.
I'll do a couple more for you, and I'll maybe save some for another rainy day. But they did an analysis on World Cup since 1982 about how often is each penalty in the World Cup shootout scored. Okay, so what percentage of the first penalty kicks in the World Cups do you think are scored?
86%.
Not quite that high, but it's still high. 73% of.
Well, you think most teams would put their best player?
Well, this is the point that the statistics show, is that the first penalty kickers
are generally the best.
Are generally the best because you put your best people forward. Do you think that the percentage of the second penalty kicks, so the opposing team's first penalty, higher or lower? It's like play your cards right.
I bet that's lower because the pressure's increased.
Do you know what? That would be the logical thing, wouldn't
it?
But
it's higher, is it?
It's higher. It's
really?
Higher.
So therefore, it's better to go second in a penalty shootout.
Better to go second in a penalty shootout.
But then, when you look at the overall stats, stats of a penalty shootout, generally the team that goes first wins because that's why they introduced the ABBA format, wasn't it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you're spot on about that. And in fact, the analysis they did showed that 11 of the last 15 penalty shootouts were won by the team taking the first penalty shootout if they successfully convert that first penalty. Right. So it's amazing how important the psychology of that first penalty going in.
And then, like, what's the percentage of the first penalty being scored to the fifth penalty being scored?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Adam, because I have at my thing. It's almost as though I've teed you up for this, which I promised everybody I hadn't done. But it's interesting. So the data suggests that teams put their three most confident penalty takers first in the penalty shootouts because
it's better to have a goal. It's better to have a goal.
Both sides in previous World Cup shootouts have a success rate above 73%. So the first three are all 73%
or higher.
So the range between 73 and 77%. But after that, the rate drops. What do you think the rate drops down to? So if we're talking about 73 to 77% for the first three kickers,
I bet it drops significantly. Because also we're talking about World Cup and Champions League penalties, right? So
so there's the pressure elements.
Yeah,
but there's also you've also got to remember you're also dealing with the best players in the world.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I remember John Terry slipping over. So, as I'm sure you remember, Ed. How are Chelsea doing, by the way?
We've got a young, dynamic team that are gelling under an ex-new manager.
They're doing.
We won this week.
Congratulations! Congratulations! A nice local
and more importantly, inherent in winning is we actually scored 2 goals, which, bearing in mind we score 1 goal in the whole of September, is a good thing.
So, are you doing better or worse than Brighton and Hove Albion?
At this stage of the season, it's statistics are meaningless after such a few number of games.
Are they? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Say that to the people at the top of the league.
Right. What does the percentage fall to for those taking the 4th and 5th penalties in penalty shootouts?
I bet it drops to about 42%.
No, it drops to an average of between about 64 and 65.
You generally with penalties, you see them go in more than you don't, right? So it's all going to be above 50%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the last stat on this topic is so we've talked about the 5 penalty kick takers, and obviously no one wants to be the 6th penalty kick person. I remember being in a cup final and I was going to be the 6th penalty taker, but then thankfully somebody missed our 5th one, so I didn't have to take it. But what percentage of people who take the 11th and 12th penalty kicks are?
11th and 12th. Oh, right. Overall, I reckon that probably drops to below 50%.
It in fact is 50% for the 11th and 12th.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. I'm going to give you one last one for fear. I don't want to bore everybody, but I'm going to give you one last topic, Adam. Again, it's analysis of World Cup penalties since 1982. Because you need to remember, penalties are a fairly recent phenomenon in terms of football. And they've sort of created a grid of the goal mouth. So imagine that the goal is split into 3 rows, okay, and 6 columns.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So divided up. So you've basically got
top left, middle, across 6 columns. Yeah. Okay.
I didn't really to be that extravagant because all I wanted to ask you is what part of the goal do you think the most number of goals are scored?
Middle
penalties in all World Cups since 1982, where the ball's got in for the penalty kick. Which part of the goal
is this from the goalkeeper's perspective or the taker's perspective?
No. Where in the goal is the penalty been shot into?
Okay, middle left.
Oh yeah, from the
taker
perspective of the taker, obviously.
Yeah, middle left, I'd say. Side netting on the left hand side.
Side netting left hand side.
Yeah, like
top,
near the
middle,
near the post.
or bottom.
Middle.
No.
Oh, I thought I was so right then. Is it bottom?
You're not far off.
Is it bottom?
Bottom left.
Yeah, because most players are going to be right-footed, so they're going to swing it with their right foot towards the left side of the goal.
Well, you say that. It's interesting. What would you say is the other most popular spot for a penalty kick to be placed? You said top. You said bottom left.
Yeah.
What would be the next?
Everyone says top right, don't they?
No, so it is
Is
interesting.
It straight down the middle?
No, it's bottom left and bottom right.
Okay.
2 top. And I agree with you in terms of you'd expect the most people being right-footed, and so bottom left being the most obvious place. But actually, 40.8% of penalty kicks, successful penalty kicks, were in the bottom right-hand corner, as opposed to 14.5% in the bottom left-hand corner.
Okay.
And yeah, so there we go. I mean, I could bore you with all the other ones, but I'm not going to do that. Those are my fun facts, Adam.
Very interesting. They're very interesting.
Do you know what? I remember about week 3 of this podcast thinking, bloody hell,
I've got to do facts for everything.
I've got to do facts for everything now. And I thought after about week 3, I'd exhausted all the websites that existed about stats, fun facts. But the internet is the gift that keeps on giving.
Having on that point, right? We have something called Y-Scout here, which analyzes every statistic there is between 2 teams once they've played a game, right? And it takes it all from the footage and it generates one of the most complex reports of like not just pass completion, but where they place the passes, what direction the passes go in, how they put their attacks together, percentages.
Is it software that does it automatically from the from the footage?
I think so. Like I don't know, but it's incredible. It's called Y-Scout, WYSCOUT. So there's stats on everything, mate. Absolutely everything. And it was more stats than I could get my head around looking at it. I was like, this is crazy. What would be good is if we designed a way of distilling the important points for a referee to take out of it. Also, just quickly, I mentioned the considerations that are in the Football Australia Laws of the Game book last time. We had someone message us going, "Oh, God, where are they? They're not on the internet or anything." And it appears that they're not on the internet at the moment.
Oh, really?
Although the laws of the game will, I think in Australia, the laws of the game are going online, so they might then appear then. So just a bit of patience.
That'd be good.
But they are a really useful tool. And it might be worth us exploring them a little bit more somewhere down the line.
Yeah. And then before anybody emails in and says it wasn't Diaz who scored that goal, I think it was Jones who scored the goal. Anyway, it wasn't Diaz. Diaz got the yellow card, I think, and the red card.
Well, when I googled it this morning, it was Diaz.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Who scored the disallowed goal?
Yeah, you type in VAR, Diaz.
Yeah, that's for the red card, I think.
No, it's not. VAR, Diaz, goal, audio, and it comes up.
Oh, well, where was
Full VAR audio, Luis Diaz disallowed goal.
I'm doubting myself. There we
go. Oh, bless you.
Anyway, there we go. It's now 10:30. It's time for me to walk the dog and go to bed.
What a bumper edition. Well, yeah. Have fun walking the dog.
That was fun.
It was good. Have a good sleep, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Have a lovely weekend, and speak to you soon.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Au revoir. Thank you so much for making it to the end of another episode of Red or Yellow. You're clearly a very fit listener. May I gently remind you to like and subscribe to the podcast in your podcast app. That way, when we release a new episode, our meandering chats will magically appear on your phone. Don't forget, you can get 10% off any refereeing equipment that you might need. If you're in Australia, head to processports.com, and if you're in the UK, head to therefereestore.co.uk. And then just use the code Red or Yellow 10 at checkout. Thank you so much for listening this week. Don't forget to follow us on social media. It's at Red or Yellow Pod. And don't forget to send in your questions. We cannot wait to speak to you again very, very soon. Ciao, ciao.